Dr. Hyunwoo Park pressed his face against the cold glass of the observation deck and watched the massive ships descend through Earth's atmosphere. The vessels were unlike anything humanity had ever seen. Each one was the size of a small city, with surfaces that seemed to shift between silver and deep purple. Strange lights pulsed along their hulls in patterns that made his eyes water if he stared too long. "They're beautiful," whispered Jiho Lee from beside him. "The young communications specialist had been working around the clock for 3 days, ever since the ships first appeared on Earth's deep space sensors. His eyes were red from lack of sleep, but they sparkled with excitement. "Beautiful and terrifying," replied Commander So-Young Kim. She stood with her arms crossed, her military uniform crisp, despite the late hour. Unlike the scientists around she did not look excited. Her hand rested on the weapon at her side, and her jaw was set in a hard line. The Seoul First Contact facility buzzed with activity. Scientists, military personnel, and government officials hurried through the corridors. Everyone knew this moment would change human history forever. After decades of searching the stars for signs of life, life had finally come to them. Hyun-woo turned away from the window and walked to his workstation. Computer screens showed data streaming in from sensors pointed at the alien vessels. The readings made no sense. The ships seemed to bend the rules of physics, moving in ways that should have been impossible. "Any luck with communications?" he asked Jiho. Jiho shook his head. "We've tried every frequency, every mathematical sequence we can think of. Radio, laser, even old-fashioned light signals. Nothing. They're either not receiving us, or they're choosing not to respond." "Maybe they don't communicate the way we do," suggested Mina Choi. The tactical analyst looked up from her own bank of computers. She had been studying the ship's movements, trying to understand their capabilities. "Look at these flight patterns. No human pilot could handle those G-forces. These beings might be completely different from us." So-Young walked over to Mina's station. "What kind of weapons do they have?" "That's the strange thing," Mina replied. "I can't detect any obvious weapon systems. No missile pods, no energy weapon arrays, nothing that looks like armor plating. Either they're incredibly advanced at hiding their weapons, or they don't think they need weapons against us," So-Young finished grimly. The main door to the facility slid open with a soft hiss. Dr. Sarah Chen, the facility director, entered with a group of government officials. Her face was pale but determined. "Everyone, listen up," she called out. The room fell silent. "We've just received word from the other facilities around the world. The ships have taken positions over every major population center on Earth: New York, London, Tokyo, Moscow, Beijing. Everywhere." A chill ran through the room. Hyun-woo felt his stomach drop. This was not the random arrival of explorers. This was coordinated, planned. "What are their intentions?" asked Jiho. "We don't know yet," Dr. Chen replied. "But we're about to find out. They've just sent us something." She activated the main display screen. Static filled the image for a moment, then cleared to show something that made everyone in the room gasp. The being on the screen stood nearly 3 meters tall. Its body was covered in what looked like living crystal, with surfaces that caught and reflected light in impossible ways. It had 6 limbs, 4 of which ended in delicate, multi-jointed hands. Its head was elongated, with large, faceted eyes that seemed to hold an alien intelligence. When it spoke, the sound was like nothing human ears had ever heard. Deep, resonant vibrations that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The words were, incomprehensible, but somehow they could understand the meaning. People of Earth, the being said, its voice somehow translating itself directly into their minds. We are the Veltar. We come from distant stars seeking new worlds and new knowledge. Your planet is rich in resources that our people need. We wish to discuss terms of cooperation. The room erupted in excited whispers. First contact. Real. Actual contact with an alien species. Despite the ominous positioning of their ships, the creature's words seemed peaceful. We have selected your facility as our primary point of contact, the being continued. We will send a delegation to meet with your representatives. Prepare for our arrival. The screen went dark. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then everyone began talking at once. Scientists checked their equipment, military personnel spoke into their radios, and government officials huddled together in urgent discussion. They want to negotiate, said Jiho, his voice filled with wonder. This is it. This is the moment humanity joins the galactic community. Yunwu was not so sure. Something about the creature's words bothered him. The way it had said, "Your planet is rich in resources that our people need," sounded less like a request and more like a statement of fact. "Commander Kim," he said quietly, pulling So Young aside. "What's your military assessment?" So Young's expression was grim. "Strategically speaking, they've got us completely surrounded. Every major city, every military installation, every government center is under one of their ships. If they wanted to attack, we'd have no chance of coordinated resistance. But they're here to negotiate," Hyun-woo said, though his voice lacked conviction. "Maybe," So Young replied. "Or maybe they're here to dictate terms." Over the next few hours, the facility became a hive of activity. Representatives from every major nation arrived by emergency transport. The UN Secretary-General was patched in via secure video link. Military leaders worked with scientists to prepare for the alien delegation's arrival. Minna's computers continued to analyze the alien ships. The readings grew more troubling by the hour. The vessels showed signs of incredible energy generation, far beyond anything Earth could produce. If they were weapons platforms, they could level entire continents. "I'm detecting some kind of energy field around each ship," she reported to the assembled leaders. "It's unlike anything in our physics textbooks. Whatever power source they're using, it makes our nuclear reactors look like candles." Jiho had been working frantically to establish better communication protocols. "I think I understand how their translation system works," he announced. "They're not just converting words. They're somehow reading our thoughts and projecting meaning directly into our minds. It's incredible technology, or incredible power," muttered So Young. As dawn broke over Seoul, the alien delegation arrived. 3 Veltar descended from their ship in vehicles that seemed to phase in and out of visibility. They landed in the facility's courtyard without making a sound. Up close, the aliens were even more impressive. Each one was unique, with different patterns in their crystalline skin and slightly different body configurations. They moved with a fluid grace that seemed to defy gravity. The lead Veltar introduced itself as High Negotiator Threndar. Through their mental communication system, it explained their situation. Their home worlds were depleted of certain rare minerals. Earth was rich in these resources. They proposed a simple trade, mining rights to Earth's asteroids and deep ocean floors in exchange for advanced technology. "Your species is young, but shows promise," Threndar communicated. "We offer guidance, protection, and knowledge beyond your current understanding. In return, we ask only for access to resources you cannot yet use yourselves. The negotiations proceeded smoothly. The aliens seemed genuinely interested in peaceful cooperation. They shared images of their technology: faster-than-light travel, unlimited energy sources, medical advances that could end disease and extend human life dramatically. Dr. Chen led the human delegation, with Hyun Woo serving as scientific advisor, and So Young providing military consultation. The terms seemed almost too good to be true. The Veltar wanted resources that humans had barely begun to exploit, and in return offered technology that would advance human civilization by centuries. "What assurances do we have?" So Young asked during one session. "That you will honor these agreements?" Threndar's faceted eyes seemed to show amusement. "Commander Kim, your species is barely capable of reaching your own moon. We have traveled between stars for thousands of your years. What could we possibly gain by deceiving you?" It was a logical point, and it convinced most of the human negotiators. If the Veltar wanted to harm humanity, they could have done so already. Their ships commanded Earth's skies, and their technology was clearly far superior. As the first day of negotiations ended, most participants felt optimistic. Humanity was about to take its place among the stars. The future looked brighter than anyone had dared to hope, but Hyun-woo could not shake his unease. Something in the way the Veltar looked at humans reminded him of how he might look at laboratory specimens. There was intelligence in their eyes, yes, but also a cold calculation that made his skin crawl. That night, as he prepared his reports on the alien physiology, he made a decision. He would continue his analysis, but he would also prepare contingency plans, just in case humanity's new friends were not as friendly as they seemed. Little did he know that his caution would soon prove to be humanity's only hope for survival. 3 months had passed since the Veltar arrived on Earth. The initial fear had given way to cautious optimism as the aliens proved to be patient negotiators. Trade agreements were signed, technology exchanges began, and humanity started to believe they had found benevolent guides to the stars. Dr. Hyun-woo Park stood in his upgraded laboratory, examining samples of Veltar technology through an advanced microscope they had provided. The crystalline structures defied everything he knew about materials science. Each sample seemed to be alive in some way, responding to electrical impulses and even appearing to repair itself when damaged. "Fascinating," he muttered, making notes on his tablet. The Veltar had been generous with their gifts, sharing medical scanners that could detect diseases before symptoms appeared, and power cells that produced clean energy for months without recharging. Commander So-young Kim walked into the lab, her expression troubled. Over the past 3 months, she had grown more suspicious rather than less. The aliens' generosity felt wrong to her military mind. No species gave away advanced technology without expecting something significant in return. "Any progress on understanding their biology?" she asked. Hyun-woo looked up from his microscope. "Some. Their cellular structure is unlike anything on Earth. It's as if they're part organic, part machine. Their healing rate is incredible, and they seem to be able to adapt to different environments instantly." "Weaknesses?" So-young asked bluntly. "I haven't found any obvious ones," Hyun-woo admitted. "Their redundant organ systems make them extremely hard to kill. Even if you destroyed what we might call their heart, they have backup circulatory systems that would keep them alive." Ji-ho Lee burst into the lab, his face pale with excitement and fear. The communications specialist had been working closely with the Veltar technical teams, learning their advanced communication systems. "We need to talk," he said urgently. "Privately." So Young immediately moved to the lab's door and activated the security locks. "What is it?" Jiho looked around nervously, as if expecting to see Veltar hidden in the shadows. "I've been monitoring their internal communications. The translation system works both ways. I can understand what they're saying to each other." "And?" Hyunwoo prompted. "They're not here for trade," Jiho whispered. "They call us the Infestation. They're waiting for something they call Cleansing Day. I heard Threndar talking to another commander about how they've done this before on 17 other worlds." So Young felt ice form in her stomach. "Done. What before?" "Complete species elimination," Jiho said, his voice barely audible. "They arrive, study the dominant species, then wipe them out completely. They've refined the process over centuries. Earth is just their latest target." The three stood in stunned silence. Everything they had believed about the Veltar was a lie. The peaceful negotiations, the generous technology sharing, the promises of partnership, all of it was preparation for genocide. "When?" So Young asked. "Soon, maybe days. They're waiting for their bioweapon to finish adapting to human genetics. They've been using the medical scanners to map our DNA." Hyunwoo's face went white. "The health screenings. They insisted on screening every human in the major cities. They said it was to help them understand our medical needs. They were mapping us for extermination," So Young said grimly. "How much time do we have?" Before Jiho could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Emergency lights bathed the corridors in red. Over the intercom system, Dr. Chen's voice crackled with panic. "All personnel to emergency stations. We have multiple hostile contacts worldwide. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill." The three ran to the facility's command center. The main screen showed a map of Earth with dozens of red warning indicators. Every major city where the Veltar had established a presence was flashing, with alert signals. Min-Ah Choi stood at her tactical station, her fingers flying over the controls as data streamed in from around the world. Her face was a mask of professional calm, but her eyes showed the terror she was fighting to control. "Report," So Young ordered. "Simultaneous attacks in all major population centers," Min-Ah said. "New York, London, Tokyo, Moscow, Beijing, Mumbai, Lagos, Cairo. The Veltar ships have begun releasing some kind of aerosol agent into the atmosphere." Dr. Chen appeared on the screen from the facility's main command room. "We're getting reports of civilian casualties. Whatever they're releasing, it's killing people on contact." Through the facility's windows, they could see the Veltar ship hovering over Seoul. A greenish mist was falling from its hull like rain. Where the mist touched the ground, plants withered and died instantly. "We need to evacuate," So Young said. But even as she spoke, she knew it was too late. The facility was directly under the alien ship. There was nowhere to run. The first screams came from the lower levels. Security cameras showed the terrible truth of what the Veltar had unleashed. People caught in the green mist began to convulse, their skin bubbling and dissolving. They died in agony as their bodies literally melted. "From the inside out. Dear God," whispered Dr. Chen over the comm. "It's happening everywhere. Reports coming in from all the major cities. Millions are dead already." Jiho frantically worked at his communications station, trying to warn other facilities around the world. "I'm broadcasting on all emergency frequencies. Maybe some remote. Locations can prepare defenses." But even as he spoke, they all knew the truth. The Veltar had planned this perfectly. Their ships were positioned over every major population center, every military base, every government facility. There would be no coordinated response, because there was no one left to coordinate it. Hyun-woo watched in horror as Seoul died below them. The city of 10 million people was becoming a graveyard in a matter of minutes. The bioweapon was incredibly efficient, targeting human DNA specifically while leaving buildings and infrastructure intact. "They're not destroying our cities," he realized aloud. "They want them intact for their own use." The facility's main door burst open. A group of Veltar soldiers entered, their crystalline armor gleaming under the emergency lights. They moved with predatory grace, their weapons humming with energy. Commander So Young drew her sidearm and fired. The bullets bounced harmlessly off the lead Veltar's armor. The alien turned toward her with what might have been amusement in its faceted eyes. "Resistance is pointless," it communicated directly into their minds. "Your species' time has ended. You served your purpose by helping us understand your biology. Now you will be recycled into useful resources." So Young kept firing, even though she knew it was useless. Beside her, Minna had pulled out her own weapon and was shooting at the aliens with the same futile determination. Ji-ho made one last desperate attempt to send a warning to anyone who might be listening. "This is Seoul Control to all stations. The Veltar are hostile. Repeat, the Veltar are hostile. They're exterminating humanity. Seek shelter in deep underground locations. The bioweapon affects surface areas first. A Veltar energy weapon discharged with a sound like breaking glass." Ji-ho's console exploded in sparks, and he was thrown across the room. He lay still, his body broken and smoking. Hyun-woo looked at his fallen friend and felt rage build inside him. He grabbed a chemical sample from his workstation and hurled it at the nearest Veltar. The vial shattered against the alien's armor, but the creature didn't even flinch. "Your hatred is noted and irrelevant," the alien said. "You are an extinct species. Accept your fate with dignity." But as the Veltar raised their weapons to finish off the remaining humans, Hyun-woo made a desperate decision. He had been studying their technology for months. He knew their systems better than any other. Human alive, with his last moments, he activated an emergency protocol he had secretly installed in the facility's computers. All the data he had gathered about Veltar biology, technology, and weaknesses uploaded to a secure military satellite network. If any humans survived the initial attack, they would have the information they needed to understand their enemy. The energy weapon fired. Hyun-woo felt searing pain as his body was torn apart at the molecular level. But as darkness closed in, he held on to one thought. Humanity was not completely defenseless. Somewhere in the data he had transmitted was the key to fighting back. Around the world, the slaughter continued. In New York, London, Tokyo, and dozens of other cities, millions died as the Veltar bioweapon swept through the population. Military bases fell silent as their personnel dissolved into organic slime. Government leaders died at their desks as the green mist penetrated even the most secure bunkers. The Veltar watched from their ships with satisfaction. Another world cleansed, another infestation eliminated. In 72 hours, they estimated, every human on Earth would be dead. They could then begin the process of strip mining the planet's resources in peace. But deep underground, in bunkers and tunnels, the aliens had not thought to check. Small groups of humans huddled in terror. They had heard Ji-ho's final transmission. They had received Hyun-woo's data upload, and they were very, very angry. The Veltar had made one critical error in their calculations. They had assumed that killing most of humanity would eliminate the threat entirely. They did not understand that sometimes the survivors of a massacre become something far more dangerous than the original population. They were about to learn that lesson the hard way. 6 months had passed since the day the world died. Above ground, Sol was a silent tomb of empty buildings and scattered bones. The Veltar had moved in quickly after the slaughter, setting up mining operations and resource extraction facilities. They worked efficiently, stripping away anything of value while the dead city crumbled around them. Deep beneath the streets, in the abandoned subway tunnels that had once carried millions of commuters, a different kind of life struggled to survive. The tunnels had become a maze of hidden passages, makeshift shelters, and carefully concealed living spaces. Here, in the darkness, 47 humans clung to existence. Dae-ho Shin crouched beside a makeshift radio, listening to static-filled transmissions from other survivor groups around the world. The former Special Forces soldier had become the unofficial leader of the Seoul underground community. His military training had kept them alive through the first terrible months, teaching them how to scavenge for food, avoid alien patrols, and stay hidden in the deep places the Veltar rarely checked. "Anything?" asked a young woman named Mi-young Park. She was one of the newer additions to their group, found 3 weeks ago near death from radiation poisoning after trying to reach the surface. "Busan Group is still active," Dae-ho replied quietly. "They've got someone working on the bioweapon problem. Could be important." In another part of the tunnel system, Dr. Yoon-ji Yang bent over a collection of salvaged laboratory equipment. The biochemist had been in a deep research bunker when the attack happened, one of the few scientific facilities that had been built far enough underground to escape the initial bioweapon deployment. She had been working non-stop for months, trying to understand how the Veltar had created such a perfect killing agent. The data upload from Dr. Hyun-woo Park had been invaluable. His final transmission had included detailed scans of Veltar biology and technology. Combined with her own analysis of bioweapon residue, Yoon-ji was slowly piecing together the aliens' methods. "The targeting system is incredibly sophisticated," she muttered to herself, studying readings on a cracked computer screen. "It identifies human DNA patterns and triggers cellular breakdown at the molecular level. But there are gaps, inconsistencies." Taemin Kang looked up from his own work area, where he was carefully disassembling a piece of Veltar technology. The engineer had risked his life repeatedly to recover alien equipment from the surface. Each piece taught them something new about their enemy's capabilities. "What kind of inconsistencies?" he asked. "The bioweapon should have killed everyone," Yoon-ji explained. 100% effectiveness was clearly the goal, but some people survived even direct exposure. Not many, but some. "There's something in certain human genetic lines that provides partial resistance." This was huge news. Dae-ho stopped his radio work and moved closer to listen. If some humans were naturally resistant to the weapon, it meant the Veltar had made their first mistake. "How many survivors worldwide?" Dae-ho asked. "Based on the radio signals I've been tracking, maybe 50,000. Scattered across every continent, but all in deep underground locations or remote areas the initial attack missed." Taemin held up a component he had extracted from a Veltar scanner. "If we can understand their technology well enough, maybe we can turn it against them." "That's exactly what I'm thinking," Yoon-ji said. "Look at this." She activated a small holographic display, one of the few pieces of alien technology they had managed to get working. The image showed a complex molecular structure that seemed to shift and change as they watched. This is the bioweapons delivery system. It's designed to bond with human cellular structures and cause rapid decomposition, but the process requires direct DNA contact to function properly. Deho studied the display. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying the weapon can be reversed. If I can modify the targeting parameters, we might be able to create a version that affects Veltar biology instead of human. The implications hit all three of them at once. They could turn the aliens' own superweapon against them. It would be justice on a molecular level." "How long would that take?" Taemin asked. "Months. Maybe longer. And I would need live Veltar specimens to test the modifications." "Leave that to me," Deho said grimly. "I've been planning raids on their surface facilities anyway. We need more supplies, and now we have an even better reason to capture some of them alive." Over the following weeks, the survivor communities began to coordinate their efforts. Radio networks connected groups in London, New York, Moscow, and dozens of other cities. They shared information about Veltar patrol patterns, successful scavenging techniques, and most importantly, scientific discoveries. The group in Tokyo had managed to tap into the aliens' communication network. They learned that the Veltar considered Earth completely pacified. The mining operations were proceeding ahead of schedule, and the aliens had already begun shipping refined materials to their home worlds. "They think we're extinct," reported the Tokyo team leader during one radio session. "They've reduced security to minimal levels. Most of their forces have moved on to other targets. This overconfidence would be their undoing." Deho began planning the first capture mission. The target was a small Veltar research station that had been established in what used to be Seoul's University District. Intelligence suggested it was lightly guarded and contained valuable equipment. Yoonji prepared sedatives that might work on Veltar physiology. Based on Hyunwoo's data, she had developed several chemical compounds that could potentially disrupt their nervous systems. They would need to test them in the field. Taemin created specialized capture equipment, nets made from salvaged steel cable, electromagnetic pulse devices built from scavenged electronics, and portable containment units that could hold a struggling Veltar long enough to transport it to their underground labs. The night of the first raid, 12 volunteers gathered in the subway tunnels. Deho had chosen each person carefully. They were all people who had lost everything to the aliens and had nothing left to lose. Mi Young Park was among them, her desire for revenge burning as bright as anyone's. They emerged from storm drains 6 blocks from the target facility. The city above was eerily quiet. Streetlights still functioned, powered by Veltar technology, but no human voices broke the silence. The only sounds were the distant hum of alien machinery and the occasional patrol vehicle passing overhead. The research station was a temporary structure built from the same crystalline material as Veltar ships. It pulsed with soft blue light, and strange symbols scrolled across its surface. 2 guards stood at the entrance, their attention focused outward rather than down. Deho's team moved with practiced stealth. They had spent months learning to avoid Veltar sensors, studying their patrol patterns, and understanding their weaknesses. The aliens were overconfident, and that made them sloppy. The attack was swift and brutal. Electromagnetic pulse weapons disrupted the guards' armor systems long enough for the humans to deploy their nets. The captured Veltar struggled with incredible strength, but the steel cables held firm. Yoonji's sedatives worked better than expected, and soon both aliens were unconscious and secured in the transport containers. Inside the facility, they found a treasure trove of information. computer cores filled with research data, biological samples from dozens of species the Veltar had exterminated, and most importantly, detailed records of their bioweapon development process. "This is incredible," whispered Taman as he copied data from the alien computers. "They've been refining this weapon for centuries. Look at this list of worlds they've cleansed." The list was horrifying. 43 planets, each once home to intelligent species, now reduced to mining operations and resource extraction sites. Earth was just the latest in a long line of genocides. But buried in the data was something else. Technical specifications for the bioweapons creation process, manufacturing procedures, chemical formulas, everything Yunji would need to reverse engineer the weapon for use against its creators. The raid team escaped back to the tunnels with their prizes, 2 live Veltar specimens, and enough technical data to begin serious weapons development. It was humanity's first victory since the slaughter began. In her underground laboratory, Yunji began the delicate process of studying living Veltar biology. The alien's cellular structure was even more complex than Yunwu's data had suggested. They had multiple redundant systems and incredible regenerative capabilities, but they were not invulnerable. "Every biological system has weaknesses," she told Daeho as she worked. "Even theirs. The same genetic complexity that makes them so resilient also gives us more targets to attack." Meanwhile, Taemin worked on understanding their technology. The Veltar devices operated on principles that human science barely comprehended. But engineering was engineering. Every machine had components that could be modified, repurposed, or turned against its creators. The captured Veltar eventually awakened in their restraints. When they realized what had happened, their mental communications became a storm of rage and disbelief. "Impossible," one of them projected. "The infestation was eliminated. Complete sterilization was confirmed." "Clearly your confirmation was wrong," Daeho replied through a translation device Taemin had built. "We're still here, we're still fighting, and we're just getting started." The alien's faceted eyes fixed on him with something that might have been fear. For the first time since arriving on Earth, the Veltar were learning that their newest target was not as helpless as they had assumed. In the darkness of the underground tunnels, humanity's survivors worked with desperate determination. They had been slaughtered, but they had not been destroyed. Now they would return the favor. 1 year had passed since the slaughter began. In her underground laboratory, Dr. Yunji Yang stared at the green liquid in the test tube. After months of work, she had finally done it. The bioweapon that had killed billions of humans now existed, in a new form, one that would target Veltar DNA instead of human. "It's ready," she announced to the group gathered around her makeshift lab table. The modified weapon should affect their cellular structure the same way theirs affected ours. Daeho Shin examined the tube carefully. The liquid looked identical to the weapon that had destroyed his world, but this version carried humanity's hope for revenge. "How do we know it works?" Yunji gestured toward the containment area where they kept their Veltar prisoners. Over the past months, the Resistance had captured 12 aliens from various raid operations. Each capture had been more dangerous than the last as the Veltar began to realize they were being hunted. "We test it," she said simply. The moral weight of that statement hung heavy in the air. They were about to become the monsters that had slaughtered their species. But everyone in the room had lost family, friends, entire cities to the aliens. The time for mercy had died with the rest of humanity. Taemin Kong had been working alongside Yeonji, developing delivery systems for the weapon. The engineer had created several methods to spread the bioagent, from aerosol dispensers to contact poisons that could be applied to surfaces the aliens might touch. The challenge is deployment, he explained. Their armor provides significant protection. We need direct contact with their skin or respiratory systems. What about their food supply? Suggested Mi-young Park. She had become one of Dae-ho's most trusted lieutenants, leading several successful raids on Veltar facilities. Do they even eat food like we understand it? They consume a nutrient paste that's manufactured in their facilities, Yunji replied. I've analyzed samples. If we could contaminate their food production centers, we could affect large numbers of them at once. Sun-ho Park stepped forward from the back of the group. Hyun-woo's younger brother had arrived at the Seoul Underground 3 months ago, leading a group of survivors from the southern regions. Unlike his scientist brother, Sun-ho was a tactician with a gift for strategic thinking that impressed even Dae-ho. We need to think bigger, Sun-ho said. One facility, even one city won't be enough. The Veltar have positioned themselves all over the planet. If we want real impact, we need coordinated strikes. The resistance had grown significantly over the past year. Radio networks now connected survivor groups on every continent. The total human population had stabilized at around 40,000 people, all living in hidden communities underground or in remote locations the aliens had never bothered to check. What are you proposing? Dae-ho asked. Sun-ho activated a holographic map that Taimin had built from salvaged alien technology. It showed Earth with red markers indicating major Veltar installations. Simultaneous attacks on their primary facilities worldwide. Food production centers, mining operations, command, posts. We hit them all at once with the bioweapon. Make them understand what it feels like to watch their people die. The plan was ambitious, beyond anything the resistance had attempted before. It would require perfect coordination between groups that had never worked together, precise timing, across multiple time zones, and enough weaponized bioagent to affect thousands of aliens simultaneously. Can we produce enough of the weapon? Dae-ho asked Yunji. If every resistance cell contributes their captured alien specimens for raw materials, yes. The process requires Veltar genetic material to create the targeting compounds. The more prisoners we have access to, the more weapon we can manufacture. The room fell silent as everyone understood what she was saying. They would need to kill their alien prisoners to create the weapon. Not in battle, not in self-defense, but as raw material for their revenge. Mi-young spoke first. They slaughtered our entire species without a second thought. They turned our people into biological waste. Why should we show them mercy they never showed us? One by one, the others nodded agreement. The decision was unanimous. Humanity would become the monster it needed to be to survive. Over the following weeks, the resistance networks worked frantically to prepare for what they called Operation Payback. Each cell was assigned specific targets based on their location and capabilities. The London group would attack the European Command Center. Tokyo would hit the Pacific Mining Coordination Facility. New York would target the North American food. Production plant Yunji worked around the clock to produce enough bioweapon for all the planned strikes. The process was horrific, but necessary. Each Veltar prisoner was systematically broken down into genetic components, their cellular structure analyzed and incorporated into the weapon's targeting system. The aliens' final moments were recorded, for intelligence purposes. As the modified bioweapon coursed through their systems, they experienced the same cellular breakdown they had inflicted on humanity. Their crystalline skin cracked and dissolved. Their redundant organs failed one by one. They died in agony, just as billions of humans had died. It works perfectly, Yunji reported after the first test. Complete cellular breakdown within minutes. Of exposure. No survivors. Taemin had been busy developing the delivery systems. He created dozens of devices disguised as everyday objects that could release the bioweapon in aerosol form, maintenance tools that Veltar workers might handle, food containers that could contaminate their nutrition centers, even decorative items that might be brought into their living areas. The hardest part was infiltration. The aliens had grown more cautious over the past months as they began to realize something was hunting them. Security at their facilities had increased, patrol schedules had become randomized, and they had started using automated systems instead of sending personnel to remote locations. But human ingenuity found ways around every obstacle. The Resistance had learned to mimic Veltar technology well enough to create fake identification devices. They could hack alien communication systems to create false orders. Most importantly, they had learned to think like predators instead of prey. 3 weeks before the planned attack, disaster almost struck. A resistance cell in Berlin was discovered by Veltar security forces. The aliens found evidence of bioweapon production and realized that humanity was not as extinct as they had believed. Emergency protocols are in effect, came the transmission from High Negotiator Threndar to all Veltar facilities. The local infestation has achieved unexpected technological capability. Increase security measures and begin systematic sweeps of underground areas. The Resistance had to accelerate their timeline. Operation Payback was moved up by 2 weeks. Some cells weren't fully prepared, but waiting meant risking discovery of the entire network. Daeho stood in the Seoul Underground's command center, surrounded by maps, communication equipment, and the faces of people who had lost everything. In a few hours, they would either strike a devastating blow against their enemies or die trying. "Final weapons check," he ordered. Around the room, team leaders confirmed their bioweapon deliveries were ready. 47 sites around the world would be hit simultaneously. If everything worked, thousands of Veltar would die in the next 6 hours. "Remember," Sunho addressed the group, "this isn't just about killing them. This is about sending a message. We want the survivors to know that humanity is still fighting. We want them to understand fear." The Seoul team's target was the central mining facility that the Veltar had built in the ruins of Gangnam District. Intelligence suggested it housed over 200 aliens and was critical to their Earth operations. Destroying it would cripple their resource extraction for months. As the team prepared to move out, Yunji handed Daeho a special container. "This one's different," she said. "Maximum concentration, airborne dispersal, designed to spread through their ventilation systems. Get this into their facility, and none of them will survive." Daeho accepted the weapon that would deliver humanity's first real revenge. After months of hiding, running, and surviving, they were finally ready to fight back. The Veltar had thought they had exterminated a helpless species. They were about to learn that they had only made humanity very, very angry. "All teams, prepare for insertion," came Sunho's voice over the radio network. "In 1 hour, we show these alien bastards what happens when you try to wipe out the human race." Around the world, 47 groups of survivors checked their weapons, said their prayers, and prepared to kill the monsters that had slaughtered their world. Operation Payback was about to begin. The Veltar had dominated the galaxy for thousands of years, wiping out species after species with their perfected bioweapons. But they had never encountered anything quite like humanity before. They had never faced a species that could turn their own weapons against them. They were about to Get a very painful education in human ingenuity, determination, and the terrible power of righteous fury. 2 years had passed since Operation Payback changed everything. The coordinated attacks had killed over 3,000 Veltar across the globe and sent shockwaves through their remaining forces. For the first time in their species' history, the Veltar had become prey instead of predators. High Negotiator Threndar stood in the command center of the main orbital station, his crystalline skin dulled with stress. The reports from Earth grew worse each day. What should have been a simple resource extraction operation had become a nightmare of guerrilla warfare and biological terrorism. "Status report," he commanded. Sub-Commander Krelvon activated the holographic display showing Earth's surface. Red markers indicated facilities that had been attacked by the human resistance. The number had grown from 47 to over 200. "We have lost 60% of our ground operations," Krelvon reported. "The humans have somehow weaponized our own bioagent against us. Every facility attack results in complete personnel loss. No survivors." Threndar studied the display with growing horror. This was not supposed to be possible. The species they had slaughtered was supposed to be extinct. Yet somehow these creatures had not only survived, but learned to turn Veltar, technology against its creators. "How many humans remain?" "Intelligence suggests approximately 40,000 scattered across the planet, all in hidden locations we cannot easily reach. They have become extremely proficient at avoiding our sensors. On Earth's surface, the human resistance had evolved into something the Veltar had never encountered before. Led by commanders like Daeho Shin and Sunho Park, they had transformed from desperate survivors into efficient killers. In the Soul Underground, now expanded into a vast network of interconnected tunnels, Yunji Yang worked in her advanced laboratory. The biochemist had perfected not just the bioweapon, but dozens of other tools for fighting the aliens. Airborne viruses that attacked Veltar neural systems, contact poisons that could be applied to any surface, even psychological weapons that disrupted their mental communication abilities. "The latest batch is ready," she announced to Taemin Kang. The engineer had become her closest collaborator, developing increasingly sophisticated delivery systems for her creations. Taemin examined the new weapon. "What does this one do?" "It targets their regenerative capabilities," Yunji explained. "Instead of killing them outright, it prevents their bodies from healing damage. A single cut becomes fatal because they can't stop bleeding." The cruelty of what they had become was not lost on either of them. But after watching their entire species die in agony, mercy was a luxury humanity could not afford. Sunho Park entered, the laboratory carrying a communication device. "We just received word from the orbital reconnaissance team. The Veltar are preparing to evacuate Earth." This was the news they had been waiting for. After 2 years of constant attacks, the aliens were finally ready to abandon the planet they had tried to steal. "How long do we have?" Daeho asked as he joined the group. "Intelligence suggests they plan to leave within the month," Sunho replied. "But there's more. They're not just evacuating. They're planning to destroy the planet entirely rather than let us keep it." The room fell silent. Even after everything they had accomplished, the Veltar were prepared to commit one final act of genocide. If they could not have Earth's resources, they would ensure no one else could either. "What kind of destruction?" Yunji asked. "Planetary core destabilization. They have devices that can trigger massive seismic events. The entire planet would tear itself apart within hours." Taemin moved to his computer workstation and began pulling up technical specifications. If they're using their standard planet killer technology, the devices would need to be placed at specific points around the globe, deep drilling sites that reach close to the planetary core. How many sites? Deho asked. At least 12, maybe more, and they would all need to be activated simultaneously to achieve complete destruction. Sunho activated his communication array. All resistance cells, this is Sol Command, priority alpha transmission. Around the world, the hidden communities of human survivors received the terrible news. The Veltar were preparing to destroy Earth rather than lose it to the species they had tried to exterminate. But humanity had one advantage the aliens had not counted on. 2 years of guerrilla warfare had taught them every detail of Veltar operations. They knew the locations of the deep drilling sites. They understood the technology being used. And most importantly, they had infiltration capabilities the aliens could no longer defend against. New mission parameters. Sunho continued his transmission. Operation Final Strike. All cells will simultaneously assault planetary destruction sites. Primary objective is capture of Veltar command personnel for intelligence extraction. Secondary objective is sabotage of planet killer devices. The scale of what they were attempting was staggering. 12 coordinated attacks against the most heavily defended Veltar installations on Earth. Each site would be protected by hundreds of alien soldiers and automated defense systems. But the alternative was the complete destruction of their homeworld. Mi-young Park had become one of the Resistance's most effective field commanders. She now led a strike team of 20 volunteers, all veterans of dozens of successful raids against Veltar facilities. Remember, she told her team as they prepared for the assault on the North American drilling site, we're not just fighting for revenge anymore. We're fighting for the right to exist. The attacks began at precisely midnight, coordinated across all time zones. In 12 locations around the globe, human strike teams emerged from hiding and launched desperate assaults against impossible odds. The Sol team, led by Deho himself, faced the primary command facility. This was where High Negotiator Threndar was coordinating the planet's destruction. If they could capture him alive, they might be able to force the other sites to shut down. The battle was unlike anything the Resistance had fought before. Veltar. Security forces, finally understanding the true threat humanity represented, had prepared every defense they could imagine. Energy barriers, automated weapons, even aerial support from orbiting ships. But human determination proved stronger than alien technology. Yunji's biological weapons cleared paths through enemy defenses. Taemin's improvised explosives brought down barriers that had seemed impenetrable, and the surviving humans fought with the fury of a species that had been pushed beyond all limits. Facility breach confirmed, came reports from sites around the world. London team has secured the European drilling site. Tokyo team reports primary objectives achieved. Moscow team has captured alien command personnel. In Seoul, Deho's team fought their way through level after level of the Veltar command facility. Each floor brought new horrors as the aliens deployed increasingly desperate defenses. But nothing could stop the humans who had survived 2 years of the most brutal guerrilla warfare in galactic history. They found Threndar in the facility's central command room, desperately trying to activate the planetary destruction sequence remotely. The High Negotiator turned as the humans burst through the final barrier, his faceted eyes showing something the species had never experienced before. Fear. Impossible, he projected into their minds. You are an extinct species. This cannot be happening. Deho raised the bioweapon dispenser Yunji had given him. We were extinct. But we got better. Wait, Threndar pleaded. We can negotiate. There are other worlds, rich systems with no indigenous populations. We can share the galaxy. Like you shared Earth? Sun Ho stepped forward, his own weapon trained on the alien commander. Like you shared the 43 other worlds you sterilized. For the first time in his species' history, a Veltar begged for mercy. Please, we were following our nature. Survival requires resources. We meant no personal hatred. Neither do we, Yunji said, as she entered the command room. This is just business. The bioweapon did its work efficiently. High Negotiator Threndar died the same way billions of humans had died 2 years earlier. His body dissolved from the inside out as his cellular structure collapsed. Around the world, the other strike teams achieved similar success. Every planetary destruction site was captured or destroyed. Every Veltar command structure was eliminated. The aliens' final attempt at genocide had failed completely, but the human resistance was not finished. They had learned to use Veltar technology, including their communication systems. Sun Ho activated the aliens' galactic transmission array and broadcast a message that would reach every Veltar ship in the galaxy. This is humanity speaking to the Veltar Empire. You came to our world believing you could wipe us out like all the others. You were wrong. We survived your slaughter. We learned from it. We turned your own weapons against you. Now we control this planet, and we have all your technology. He paused, letting the implications sink in across light years of space. Consider this your warning. Earth is now under human protection. Any alien species that threatens our world will face the same fate as your people here. We were slaughtered, but we endured. We were victims, but we became predators. We do not forgive. We do not forget. We are humanity, and we are done being prey. The message traveled across the galaxy at faster-than-light speeds, carrying with it the technical specifications of how humans had reversed Veltar bioweapons. Other species that had suffered under alien oppression would now have the tools they needed to fight back. Earth's skies were clear for the first time in 2 years. The Veltar ships had been captured or destroyed. The mining operations had been shut down. The planet was free, but the 40,000 human survivors knew their real work was just beginning. They had become something new in the galaxy, a species that had faced extinction and emerged stronger. They would rebuild their world, and they would make sure no other species ever suffered the fate the Veltar had tried to inflict on them. The age of human expansion into the stars was about to begin, and the galaxy would never be the same.